A lot of times, and here's the biggest one, is like our ancestors died for our right to vote. I think this is the one that needs to be addressed the most, because we're only talking about a certain time period when we're addressing that, which is particularly like the civil rights movement. But we don't study what was before the civil rights movement, because by the time we got to the civil rights movement, we were a destroyed people. We lost a lot. Our radical tradition had lost that. A lot of that revolutionary spirit had been lost. Why? Because we were coming on the heels of, right, so many assassinations, number one. Or in that era, of course, the Martin Luther King, the Malcolm X's, right? Even the John F. Kennedy. But even before that, of course, many will say, talk about all of the revolutionaries before that who had been assassinated by this government specifically. And I think that that's something that I might say lightly, but I think it's something that we need to understand. Like, black men who have stood up and fought for liberation in this country, and black women who have stood up and fought for liberation in this country, historically was assassinated by the government. I didn't say Democrats or Republicans. I said the government, because this is where they had, agreement, right? The FBI and things of that nature. White supremacy agreed upon the issue of, black freedom fighters as an issue, and our collective organizing as a problem. So, but let's go deeper than that. Let's understand something, right? Many of our ancestors died for a lot of things. Malcolm X, when Martin Luther King, when he died, he realized that he had integrated into a burning house. He realized that even though he was sending his people, right, and he was fighting for something, he was in the wrong fight. That's what he realized. And there's not enough discussion upon that statement and that idea, number one. So when we talk about our ancestors died for our right to vote, we're not talking about Martin Luther King, because he was assassinated by the very government. Right? And he was murdered because he wanted to start talking about economic rights, right? And I'm sure essentially would have got to human rights and our global allies in our fight. But I want to take us back to the 1920s, because when you study the history of Black America's social movements, what you're going to see is the picket signs change. The signs that we have in the streets change. And this is something that I'll be making a post right after this. So in the 1920s and the 30s, you will see some of the signs talking about ownership and freedom and do for self. And a lot of those times it'll be talking about, Pan-Africanism and, how do we go upon, like one of the signs that was in the streets was a very dope one. It was saying that how many farms that we own and how many acres of land that we own. Like they was in the streets with a sign marching, right? Showing what we own. Think about that for a second. In modern day, we don't have those type of marches. There was a silent march, right? So, and this is something that I would love to bring back, because instead of a march that is a protest against the system, I want it to be a march, right? That is a protest, or that is a march to get the attention of our people to build upon a movement that is growing and that is starting. Because a lot of times our marches and our activisms are often from a place of, they're from a place of victimhood, right? And they're not from this place of victory. And what we need in today's time is more hero tales and more victory. So imagine if all the farmers outside marching saying that, look, we own 1 million acres of land. We have done this amount of investments. We have this amount of assets. We have this amount of power. We're not asking for anything. We are here to save ourselves. And the new American mind, right, is to be fearless and go for what you want beyond any means and get it on your own merit, and at the same time act in collective responsibility. Because the picket signs changed from the era of the Marcus Garveys, right, to the era of the civil rights movement. But you have to understand what happened in between those times. Of course, we had World War II. And during the loss of World War II, it actually hit a lot of the black movements very hard, because a lot of those movements you have to remember we're in direct ties and connection to the Japanese, who they thought was going to help us defeat white supremacy. And we was looking at it as a global ally. So when the World War II was lost and they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, they didn't just drop that bomb on Hiroshima, right? That bomb also became a devastating symbol of the power of white supremacy, how far they was willing to go, and it hit the movements very hard that was essentially pushing propaganda with pro-Japan sentiments. And so a lot of those movements broke apart. You had Minnie Maud, who had the Ethiopian Brotherhood, right? And you had many other ones that was in connection to the Black Dragon Society and things of that nature that had ties, because there was a lot of Japanese businessmen who came here early in Detroit and St. Louis that was helping out black people specifically, right? With entrepreneurship, economics, technology, things of that nature. So we had a lot of these allied things that we was focusing on because we looked at white supremacy, right, as the ultimate enemy. And anybody that found an enemy of our enemy became an ally of us. And we started to do cultural exchange, and we started to learn from each other, right? And therefore we was able to start building out movements, and we started to share what will work on your side, what could work on our side. And what we lost is our global campaign. What we lost the most about our movements today is our global campaign and our sense of economic power as a tool for liberation. We say we've now minimized it to financial literacy. But financial literacy does not equal economic power. Not if there is not an organizing force behind it. And this is what's important, because when you look at, and this is why it's important to have a collective ideology about what is it that you want and what is it that you're organizing for and what agenda that you're pushing, right? There is a black agenda. There are many of them. But there is not one particular agreed upon black agenda, because then it would be so much easier for us to organize around our agenda to get what we want based on who's ever presenting, right, the closest to giving us what we want. So then what it would mean is that your vote becomes a tactic and a strategy versus a savior. Because right now, the metaphor of the vote is it is going to save you. It is a savior. Versus that it's a part of the plan and the strategy. And I know you all waiting for me to tell you who to vote for. But I don't think that that's my place. I can't tell you who to vote for besides yourself. And I say that in your heart of hearts, whether you believe that this vote, and I'm not talking about the president, forget the president.